Listen up. Your job is already on borrowed time. I'm not talking about some distant economic collapse or next year's budget cuts. I mean, right this second, as you're reading this, the ground is shifting under your feet. This isn't another recession scare. This is something fundamentally different. Companies are systematically dismantling the entire concept of job security, and they're doing it so quietly that most people won't realize what happened until they're already gone. The really messed up part? It doesn't matter how well you perform. Doesn't matter if you're the star employee or if you've been there 20 years. The new equation doesn't factor in loyalty or dedication or any of that stuff we were told mattered. Yet here's what makes this moment in 2026 so dangerous compared to every other downturn you've lived through. There's no alarm bell, no economic indicators flashing red, no talking heads on TV warning you to brace yourself. Just steady, surgical removal of positions that companies have decided they can function without. And here's the kicker. They're not planning to ever bring those jobs back. By the time you finish reading this, you'll understand the exact blueprint companies are using right now to decide who stays and who goes. More importantly, you'll learn how to identify the exact moment when your role transitions from essential to expendable in your company's eyes. Not in theory, not as a future possibility. In real time, while you still have options. So let's get uncomfortable for a minute. Seriously, uncomfortable. Because if your position evaporated tomorrow morning, just gone, like it never existed, would your company actually feel pressured to fill it? Would operations grind to a halt? Or would they just redistribute your tasks, automate a few things, and keep moving like nothing happened? Think about that. Really think about it. Because that's the question being asked about your job right now, whether you know it or not. 10. Boeing. When keeping people alive becomes a budget problem. For generations, Boeing wasn't just a company. It was the embodiment of American manufacturing dominance. We didn't just build planes, we built the gold standard. The biggest, most sophisticated, most reliable aircraft the world had ever seen. When you saw that Boeing logo, you knew you were looking at engineering excellence that had been earned over decades. Now, that reputation used to actually mean something tangible. It meant investment in quality. It meant institutional obsession with safety. It meant layers upon layers of people whose entire career was dedicated to making sure nothing went wrong. Then, Boeing eliminated 2,500 positions. And before you write this off as standard corporate belt-tightening, let me tell you exactly why this should make you stop cold. These weren't entry-level positions. These weren't administrative assistants or temporary contractors. We're talking about engineers with advanced degrees, quality control specialists with decades of experience, flight safety experts whose literal job description was prevent planes from falling out of the sky. People pulling in anywhere from $85,000 to $140,000 annually. Serious professionals doing serious work. Meanwhile, Boeing is currently drowning in over $31 billion in losses. Aircraft orders aren't exactly flooding in like they used to. Every regulatory agency on the planet is scrutinizing every single thing they do. And this is all happening after years of catastrophic, public, deadly safety failures that made international headlines. So, what's Boeing's response to being in a safety crisis? Cut the people whose job is finding safety problems before they kill passengers? Yeah, let that sink in. Imagine taking your car to a mechanic, and while he's got it up on the lift, he casually mentions they've been saving money by laying off everyone who inspects brakes. You'd run out of that shop so fast, you'd leave skid marks. Yet this is exactly the logic being applied to commercial aviation. But here's the thing, Boeing itself isn't actually the story here. The story is what this decision reveals about how companies think now. When an American institution, a company that literally defined American industrial might for a century, starts treating safety experts as expendable costs rather than the people keeping passengers alive, something has broken at a foundational level. Ask yourself, is this a temporary cost-cutting measure they'll reverse when things improve? Or is this proof that safety and quality have been permanently downgraded below quarterly earnings targets in the corporate priority list? And if this calculus can happen in aviation, an industry where mistakes result in immediate, public, catastrophic death, what does it mean for industries where the damage takes longer to show up and is easier to hide? Which brings us to what happens when even union protection can't save your job anymore. 9. UPS. When the trucks still roll, but the people don't. UPS used to represent something solid in American working life. Real union protection that actually meant something. Health insurance you could count on. An actual pension that would be there when you retired. Predictable schedules you could build a family routine around. The kind of middle-class stability that let you plan more than 3 months ahead. Nobody's pretending it was glamorous work. It wasn't going to make you wealthy, but it was reliable. It was secure. And for a long time in America, reliable and secure was enough to build a decent life. Then 48,000 jobs disappeared. Let that number actually register. That's not corporate PR language. That's a seismic event. Oh, we're not talking about some Silicon Valley startup that hired too fast and had to correct course. This is literally the circulatory system of American commerce we're talking about. Drivers who knew their routes like the back of their hand. Warehouse workers who'd been there so long they remembered when everything was tracked on paper. Dispatchers, supervisors, people earning anywhere from $45,000 to nearly $100,000. Folks who'd put in decades and thought they had their future locked in. The official explanation? Restructuring and automation. Clean, corporate, meaningless. Here's what that actually means. UPS has dumped billions into sorting robots, automated warehouse systems, scanning technology that doesn't need human hands. Each new distribution center costs hundreds of millions to build and outfit. But once it's running, they're looking at roughly $3 billion in annual savings. That's billion with a B. And here's why the math works so beautifully on a spreadsheet. Robots don't unionize. They don't strike. They don't need vacation days or sick leave. They don't negotiate contracts. They work 24/7 without complaining, without benefits, without asking for raises. Meanwhile, the online shopping boom that seemed infinite is cooling off. Families are tightening budgets. People are making fewer impulse purchases. Fewer purchases mean fewer packages. And when volume drops, that uncomfortable spreadsheet question appears in the boardroom. Exactly how many humans do we actually need? The trucks are still out there on the roads. The packages are still getting delivered. There are just dramatically fewer people involved in making it happen. Did he think about what this means? These were union jobs. The kind of jobs that workers fought for, literally fought for, over generations. Protected by decades of hard-won precedent and collective bargaining power. And they still got wiped out in massive numbers. If rock-solid union jobs with institutional protection can be automated away, then who exactly is safe? What happens to society when the middle class itself becomes raw material for the automation machine and the only people left are those who own the machines and those who used to operate them? 8. General Motors. When the future becomes unaffordable. Electric vehicles were supposed to be our salvation story. Clean energy, modern technology. The next chapter of American manufacturing dominance, the jobs of the future. GM went all in on this vision. They poured over $35 billion into the EV transition in just a few years. New manufacturing facilities, advanced battery technology, bold public commitments about leading the electric revolution. Then 2026 rolled around, and GM announced 3,400 layoffs. But here's the part that should mess with your head. These weren't legacy positions. These weren't the old factory jobs everyone predicted would disappear. They cut the future. The jobs everyone said were safe in the new economy. Battery engineers, software developers, electric drivetrain specialists, the exact people building the technology that was supposed to replace fossil fuels and save American manufacturing. Want to understand why? Walk into any GM dealership right now. The answer is sitting right there in plain sight. Row after row of sleek, beautiful electric vehicles. Gorgeous engineering, cutting-edge technology. There's almost nobody buying them. Most EVs are priced between $50,000 and $60,000. Car loan rates are absolutely crushing people right now. Over 7% of Americans are currently behind on their auto payments. That's not a small number. That's a crisis. The brutal truth nobody wants to say out loud: people don't hate electric cars, they just can't afford them. Period. You can't sell someone a cleaner tomorrow when they're barely covering rent today. You can't ask families to save the planet when they're trying to keep their personal finances from imploding. Every unsold electric car sitting on a dealer lot isn't just inventory. It's frozen capital. It's daily storage costs adding up. It's weight on the corporate balance sheet getting heavier every quarter. It's when that pressure builds past a certain point, companies start walking back all those bold promises they made just months earlier. You can't save the planet with cars nobody can buy. For thousands of GM workers, the shock isn't just about losing employment. It's the realization that they genuinely thought they were building the future, only to discover the future was first on the chopping block when money got tight. This reveals something critical about how the system actually operates now, which connects directly to what happens when America's safety net starts tearing. 7. Walmart. When even the cheapest store starts cutting. When people run out of money, Walmart transforms from just another retailer into something like a thermometer measuring how everyday Americans are actually doing. When the economy's stable, and other people still shop there, maybe buying a bit less, opting for store brands. When things get bad, the parking lots are packed, because honestly, where else is there to go? So when Walmart starts eliminating positions, that's not routine business optimization. That's a signal that something fundamental is broken in the consumer economy. In 2026, they cut approximately 500 positions. Before you think that sounds small compared to other companies, let me explain why this should worry you more than the bigger numbers. These weren't cashiers. These weren't seasonal workers hired for the holidays. Walmart specifically targeted logistics professionals, supply chain strategists, the behind-the-scenes people earning $70,000 to $100,000 who keep the entire operation running smoothly. Why would they do this? So pull out your last grocery receipt and you'll understand. 3 years ago, a basic shopping trip might have run you about $90. Today, eggs, chicken, milk, canned goods, bread, the absolute basics, you're looking at $120, possibly more. Food prices have jumped somewhere between 15% and 22% depending on what you buy. Unless your paycheck jumped by the same percentage, which I'm willing to bet it absolutely did not. That gap is coming from somewhere. People still need to eat, that's not optional. But they're shopping completely differently now. Fewer items per trip. More store brands, fewer name brands, less frequent shopping trips, which means Walmart is selling less volume overall, and products are sitting on shelves longer. Warehouses that used to operate at near capacity now have noticeable empty sections. That's when the cold arithmetic question appears in the executive meetings. How many workers do we actually need to manage reduced volume? The machines provide an answer. AI systems track inventory in real time. Automated scanners monitor everything. Robots can work all night without stopping. They don't get sick, don't need breaks. Never ask for raises. On a spreadsheet, they're absolutely perfect. When Walmart makes these cuts, they're admitting something deeply unsettling. American shoppers are fundamentally tapped out. Even the ultimate sell cheap to everyone business model is starting to crack under financial pressure. And here's where it gets darker. If Walmart, selling literal survival essentials like food, is pulling back on staffing, what happens to companies selling luxury goods, high-end tech, or non-essential items? The answer isn't pretty, which takes us to the tech giants. 6. Amazon, the experiment in human obsolescence. Amazon didn't just change retail. It fundamentally altered how we live our daily lives. 2-day shipping on basically anything became so normal, we forgot it wasn't always this way. We adapted to instant gratification as the default expectation. But right now, they're running a different kind of experiment. They're systematically figuring out exactly how few human beings they need to operate. Publicly, Amazon announced 14,000 cuts. But people actually inside the company are quietly saying the real number is closer to 30,000. And these aren't warehouse workers. We're talking about tech professionals, cloud infrastructure engineers, advertising specialists, AI developers, people pulling in $120,000 to $200,000 annually. Why? Most because they've invested over $50 billion into AI cloud infrastructure and warehouse automation. One modern Amazon warehouse costs between $300 and $500 million just to build. But once it's operational, it runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No workplace injuries, no bathroom breaks, no contract negotiations. The robots aren't replacing people one by one. They're eliminating entire shifts, entire departments, complete job categories that used to require hundreds of workers. And you're probably contributing to this, whether you realize it or not. Most people are spending less. Cutting back. You load up your cart online, scroll through everything, and then close the app without actually buying because the total is too high. Here's what should genuinely worry you. Amazon's not doing this because they're struggling financially. No, they're profitable. They're growing. They're thriving. They're running an experiment to see if they can build a business model where human workers transition from essential to optional, from necessary to convenient, from irreplaceable to replaceable. And if this experiment works for Amazon, it's not staying at Amazon. It's going to spread to whatever company you work for next. Quick reality check. How many of these first 6 companies have you personally watched transform over the last couple years? Boeing cutting safety positions, UPS automating away union jobs, GM's electric vehicle collapse, Walmart raising prices while cutting logistics staff, Amazon methodically reducing headcount while profits soar. If you're counting 3 or more, you're not an outlier. You're part of the majority watching this happen in real time. If that's you, hit that like button and subscribe, because the next 4 companies get significantly darker. We're getting into tech companies being replaced by their own creations, infrastructure that keeps America running, and the last one involves national security, losing to profit margins. 5. Salesforce, when family lasts. Exactly as long as the revenue. This is what happens when corporate culture evaporates. The second revenue projections drop. Salesforce always positioned themselves as different from typical tech companies. They pushed this concept called Ohana really hard. It's Hawaiian for family. The whole culture was supposedly built on genuine connection, mutual support, people actually caring about each other as humans. And for years, it legitimately wasn't just marketing talk. People joined Salesforce specifically for that culture. Not just the compensation, because it actually felt like you mattered as a person, not just as a worker generating value. Then, overnight, 4,000 jobs vanished. Just gone. Clean. Quiet. No lengthy explanation. Just widespread cuts across customer service, sales divisions, tech teams, remote workers. Top performers earning anywhere from $90,000 to $180,000. People who'd bought into the family narrative completely. What happened to all those Ohana promises? AI happened. Tools that automatically write emails. Customer service systems that interact with clients. Sales prediction algorithms. Behavioral analysis software. Work that previously needed entire teams of people now essentially runs itself. The savings? Approximately $300 million annually. At the same time, on Salesforce's customer base, primarily small and mid-sized businesses, started cutting back on expenses. As interest rates climbed and budgets tightened, paying $50 to $100 per employee every month for software became an easy line item to eliminate. Revenue growth slowed. Profit margins shrank. The family got dramatically smaller. The reality is crystal clear. Ohana means family, until a spreadsheet says otherwise. Corporate culture is mostly branding and public relations. When money gets tight, those inspiring mission statements are the first thing out the door. Which brings us to companies that literally built the technology that's now replacing them. 4. Microsoft, when the builders get replaced by what they built. When the people who created the technology get replaced by that same technology, that's when the whole situation starts feeling dystopian. Microsoft used to represent the ultimate safe bet in tech. Cutting-edge work, long, stable careers, building the actual future of computing. Yet, in 2026, they cut approximately 6,000 jobs. Here's the part that doesn't make immediate sense. Microsoft's not failing, not even close. They're generating tens of billions in profit. They're swimming in cash reserves. So why eliminate positions now? Because the AI systems they built are literally taking over the work. Software engineers, cloud architects, security specialists, people earning $120,000 to $200,000 annually. The exact people who built Windows, who created Office, who maintain Azure, who keep critical systems running for millions of companies worldwide. Microsoft has invested tens of billions into AI development. On training one advanced AI model can cost between $50 and $100 million. Their data centers consume as much electrical power as small cities. Something had to give. They chose people. Their AI now writes technical documentation, tests software for bugs, identifies security vulnerabilities, manages complex operations, Tasks that previously required entire teams of specialized experts now run automatically, constantly, without human intervention. The AI doesn't get tired, doesn't take vacations, doesn't negotiate for raises, doesn't have performance reviews, doesn't need healthcare benefits. And here's what really stings about this. Nobody's angry at you personally. Nobody's saying you failed or underperformed. The system has simply evolved to the point where it doesn't need you anymore. Your entire job has been optimized into non-existence. Yes, what hurts isn't just losing employment. It's the realization that you've been reduced to a number on a spreadsheet. 20 years of accumulated experience and institutional knowledge doesn't make the algorithm execute 1 second faster. Your expertise has zero impact on the bottom line anymore. This isn't just Microsoft's pattern. This is the blueprint being rolled out everywhere, including what happens when the infrastructure keeping America connected starts cutting the people who run it. 3. Verizon, when the people keeping us connected get disconnected. There are certain industries you don't even notice until they catastrophically fail. Telecommunications is one of them. You don't consciously think about Verizon when you're video calling family across the country, when you're streaming content without buffering, or when you're using GPS navigation in terrible weather. When it all works seamlessly, it feels automatic, almost magical. But it's not magic at all. Behind every single call, every signal, every connection, there are real people making it work, maintaining systems, fixing problems, keeping everything running. Then 2026 arrived, and Verizon announced approximately 15,000 cuts. And these weren't just office administrative positions. Network technicians, customer service representatives, maintenance crews, supervisors, the people who keep systems operational when power fails, when storms hit, when emergencies strike. The invisible workforce keeping the entire country online. Why would a company running critical national infrastructure do this? Because they're being squeezed from both directions simultaneously. Now, Verizon spends between $8 and $10 billion yearly on 5G infrastructure and network upgrades. That's not optional spending. That's staying competitive and relevant. Meanwhile, consumers are systematically downgrading their service plans, moving from $80 monthly packages to cheaper options with slower speeds. Not because connectivity matters less to them, because bills keep piling up and something has to give. Competition is intensifying. Cheap carriers are stealing customers. Debt obligations and infrastructure costs are crushing profit margins from every possible angle. When that pressure hits a breaking point, companies do the same predictable thing: cut labor costs. For Verizon, those workforce cuts save approximately $1.2 billion annually. Here's the harsh truth. Even genuinely essential services aren't considered essential when it comes to keeping people employed. What bothers people isn't just the layoffs themselves. It's the deeper philosophical question underneath. If workers who literally keep America connected are treated as disposable, where exactly is the line between essential and expendable? Does that line even exist anymore? Now we move to when even knowledge work isn't safe. 2. IBM, when office workers learn what factory workers already knew. For years, Americans maintained this belief that there was a protective line. Factory jobs could be automated. Everyone understood that. But office work? Engineers? Data analysts? Tech professionals working at computers? Those were supposed to be safe, protected by the nature of the work itself. But IBM represented that belief perfectly. A century-old company with stable culture, clear career progression paths. People joined expecting to spend decades there and retire with respect and dignity. Then 2026 came, and IBM announced approximately 2,700 layoffs. And these weren't assistants or support staff positions, cloud computing experts, data analysts, security professionals, consultants, the knowledge workers, the brains of the entire operation. The reason was brutally blunt: automation. IBM has invested heavily in internal AI systems, enough to replace roughly 30% of work currently being done by humans. This one round of cuts saves approximately $250 million yearly. On paper, the math looks absolutely beautiful. But people aren't numbers on a spreadsheet. Picture this scenario. You're 52 years old. Oh, you've spent 20 years mastering IBM's complex systems. You've followed every rule, hit every performance target, done exactly what they asked, exactly when they asked. You've been the model employee. Then one Tuesday morning, you're informed your job has been optimized. Not because you failed, not because your work quality declined, because a machine does it faster, cheaper, without needing breaks or benefits. Office workers are learning the exact same brutal lesson factory workers learned years ago. Your expertise doesn't protect you when it becomes economically inefficient. What makes it worse is what's underneath this. Many people genuinely thought that having a degree, accumulating experience, and demonstrating loyalty would protect them when things got difficult. But when AI advances faster than people can possibly retrain, our age transforms from an asset into a liability. Experience becomes expensive rather than valuable. So here's the question nobody wants to ask out loud. If even these knowledge economy jobs, the last supposed refuge of the middle class, aren't safe anymore, who exactly is? What jobs are actually protected? This leads us to the final piece, where national security priorities meet profit margins. And guess which one wins? 1. Intel. When national security meets money, and money wins. For decades, Intel wasn't just another tech company competing in the marketplace. It was a symbol of American technological dominance. That Intel Inside sticker was more than branding. It was a promise. The United States didn't just design cutting-edge technology. We manufactured it here, on American soil. So when Intel announced approximately 20,000 cuts, your people weren't just concerned about job losses, they were genuinely confused. Especially since Washington keeps giving speeches about supply chain security, domestic chip manufacturing, winning the semiconductor race against China. But making semiconductors isn't like developing software. You can't pivot overnight. It requires massive capital investment, years of careful planning, near-perfect precision execution. One modern fabrication facility costs between $15 and $20 billion just to construct. That's before you even consider operational costs. It's essentially building a small city whose sole purpose is making silicon wafers thinner than a human hair. Intel made enormous bets. New fabrication facilities, bigger, more advanced equipment, ambitious public plans to reclaim manufacturing leadership. Yeah, but while they were building all this infrastructure, the fundamental market rules changed underneath them. The AI boom hit. Demand shifted dramatically from CPUs, Intel's traditional specialty, to GPUs. That's where NVIDIA and overseas companies got ahead. TSMC now manufactures chips faster, cheaper, and often better than Intel can. Intel got squeezed from both sides simultaneously. Political pressure demanding they keep manufacturing domestically in the United States. The brutal economic math of shrinking profit margins and mounting losses. When those forces collide head-on, workers are always the ones who take the hit. National security sounds inspiring in political speeches until it's actually time to pay people's salaries. 20,000 cuts isn't an abstract number. It's tens of thousands of good-paying jobs disappearing from communities that were built around Intel facilities. From Arizona to Oregon to Ohio, whole cities constructed around chip manufacturing plants asking one terrifying question. What happens when the factory shrinks? And there's an even quieter question nobody wants to voice publicly. What happens when a supposed national security strategy doesn't generate enough profit fast enough to satisfy investors? The pattern you can't ignore anymore. That's the pattern laid bare. And once you actually see it clearly, you can't unsee it. What you just read wasn't 10 random companies making 10 separate, unrelated decisions. It was 10 pieces of the exact same puzzle. An economy where loyalty doesn't protect you anymore, where accumulated experience doesn't help your case, or where your work is constantly being compared to how cheaply a machine can replicate it. None of these companies are villains in some morality play. They're doing precisely what the system rewards, maximizing shareholder value and minimizing operational costs. The real question isn't about assigning blame or determining who's right or wrong. It's about understanding where this trajectory leads. Look at the complete pattern. Walmart cuts logistics professionals because customers can't afford to buy enough. Boeing cuts safety engineers because fixing systematic problems costs more than eliminating the people finding them. GM cuts battery engineers because consumers can't afford the vehicles of the future. IBM cuts cloud experts because AI does the work cheaper. Microsoft cuts the people who built the systems because those systems now run themselves. Salesforce cuts family members when profit margins drop. Verizon cuts workers keeping the country connected. Intel cuts manufacturing despite being labeled a national security priority. UPS cuts drivers even though packages still need moving. Amazon cuts jobs simply because it can, because the experiment in human obsolescence is working. Every single story follows the same script. Technology advances, operating costs rise, people struggle financially, companies optimize, jobs disappear. This isn't temporary market correction. This is complete restructuring of how the economy fundamentally values human beings. The middle class was built on one simple, straightforward deal. Work hard, stay loyal, and you'll achieve stability. Now, that deal is falling apart right now, in real time, across every industry. Here's what keeps me awake at night. Those approximate 1.1 million jobs didn't relocate somewhere else. They weren't outsourced to another country. They didn't shift to a different state or region. They just disappeared, replaced by code, algorithms, machines that never sleep, never complain, never negotiate. And this is just the beginning. The companies cutting jobs right now are successful companies. They're profitable. They're growing. They're making billions. Now imagine what happens when struggling companies start running the same cold arithmetic. What nobody wants to say out loud. Some people will argue this is just creative destruction. The economy always adapts. New jobs replace old ones. Or just like during the Industrial Revolution or when computers transformed offices. But there's one critical difference that changes everything. Those previous transformations took generations to unfold. People had time to adjust. Children grew up learning entirely new skill sets. Communities changed slowly over decades. People could adapt gradually. This is happening in years, sometimes months. A 50-year-old logistics worker can't transform into an AI engineer overnight. A 45-year-old software developer can't compete with algorithms that run continuously without ever burning out.